The stars looked different when they were burning. Admiral Taemin stood on the bridge of the Alliance battleship Harmony, watching through the main screen as another colony ship exploded in the distance. The bright flash lasted only a few seconds, but he knew that thousands of lives had just ended. Men, women, children from a dozen different worlds, all gone in an instant. "Sir, that was the last transport from Kepler 7, Captain Yunbi said quietly. She was his best tactical officer, someone who had served with him for over 10 years. Her voice was steady, but Taemin could see the pain in her eyes. "How many got out?" he asked. "Maybe 2,000. The planet had 50,000 people." Taemin closed his eyes for a moment. 50,000 souls who had been living peaceful lives just days ago. Farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, families. Now they were dust floating in space. The Vorthak Empire had been moving through Alliance territory like a wildfire through dry grass. Every world they touched became empty and dead. Their black ships moved in perfect formations. Their weapons cut through Alliance shields like they weren't even there, and their soldiers showed no mercy to anyone. "Commander Hyunwoo is requesting permission to speak with you, sir," said Lieutenant Bo-Ram from the communication station. "Put him through." The hologram of Commander Hyunwoo appeared in the center of the bridge. He was supposed to be coordinating the defense of the outer colonies, but his face looked like he hadn't slept in days. His uniform was torn and dirty. "Admiral, we've lost contact with 3 more systems. The Vorthak are moving faster than we thought possible. Our ships can't even slow them down." Taemin had heard this report too many times. "What's our current strength?" "We have maybe 40 ships left that can fight. They have over 300 that we've seen, and probably more coming." The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Everyone knew what those numbers meant. The Alliance Defense Fleet had started this war with nearly 200 ships. They had been proud of their technology, their training, their unity between different alien races. None of it mattered against the Vorthak. "Sir," Hyunwoo continued, "I think it's time we asked Earth for help." Several officers turned to look at Taemin. Earth was humanity's homeworld, but they had stayed out of galactic politics for over 50 years. When the Alliance formed, humans had politely declined to join. They said they preferred to focus on their own development. "The humans have never shown interest in our affairs," Yunbi said. "They also have never faced an enemy like the Vorthak," Hyunwoo replied. "If we fall, Earth will be next. The Vorthak don't leave anyone alive." Taemin had met humans before. They were strange compared to other species in the galaxy. They seemed weaker physically than most races. Their technology wasn't particularly advanced, and they had this odd habit of treating everyone as equals regardless of species. But there was something about them that made other beings feel safe. "What makes you think they would help us?" asked Captain Yunbi. "Because they're human," Hyunwoo said simply. "I served with some human officers during my training. When someone needed help, they helped. It didn't matter if it was dangerous or if there was nothing in it for them. They just helped." Another explosion lit up the screen. This time it was one of their own ships. The Defender had been trying to cover the retreat of civilian vessels. Taemin watched the bright flash and knew that 800 Alliance soldiers had just died buying time for others to escape. "How do we even contact Earth?" Yunbi asked. "They have an embassy station at Proxima Centauri," Bo-Ram said from her station. "We could send a message there." Taemin thought about it. The Alliance had its pride. They were supposed to be the advanced civilization, the ones with superior technology and military might. Asking for help from humans, who most of the galaxy saw as a minor species, would be embarrassing. But embarrassment was better than extinction. "Bo-Ram, open a channel to the human embassy at Proxima." "Yes, sir." The communication screen flickered, and then a human face appeared. It was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She was wearing a simple blue uniform. "This is Ambassador Park at the Earth Embassy. How can we help you?" "Ambassador, this is Admiral Taemin of the Alliance." "Defense Fleet, we need to speak with your government about the Vorthak threat." The woman's expression became serious. "I've been following the reports, Admiral. Please go ahead." Taemin took a deep breath. "The Vorthak Empire is destroying everything in their path. We've lost 12 star systems in 2 months. Our technology, our weapons, our strategies, nothing works against them. They adapt to everything we try." He paused, watching the human woman's face. She was listening carefully, not interrupting. "We estimate they'll reach the core Alliance worlds within 6 weeks. After that, they'll probably turn toward human space. We're requesting military assistance from Earth." Ambassador Park was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, I need to ask, what kind of assistance are you looking for?" "Ships, weapons, soldiers, anything you can spare. We know humans have stayed neutral, but this threatens everyone in the galaxy." "I understand. Admiral, I'm going to forward your request directly to the Planetary Defense Council on Earth. Can you send me all the tactical data you have on the Vorthak?" "Of course." "One more question, Admiral. In your experience, what is the Vorthak's greatest strength?" Taman thought about all the battles they had lost. "They're adaptable. Every tactic we use, every weapon we deploy, they find a way to counter it within hours. It's like they can see inside our minds and know what we're going to do before we do it." Ambassador Park nodded. "Thank you, Admiral. I'll make sure Earth's leadership understands the urgency of the situation. We'll have an answer for you within 24 hours. The communication ended and the bridge was quiet again. "Do you think they'll help?" Yunbi asked. "I don't know," Taman admitted. "Humans are hard to predict." The next 24 hours felt like the longest in Taman's life. The Alliance fleet continued its fighting retreat, trying to buy time for more civilians to escape. They lost 6 more ships and couldn't destroy even one Vorthak vessel. Finally, Ambassador Park's face appeared on the screen again. "Admiral Taman, Earth's Planetary Defense Council has reviewed your request, and we will provide assistance." Taman felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, Ambassador. When can we expect your fleets to arrive?" The ambassador looked a bit uncomfortable. "Admiral, Earth is sending 1 ship." "1 ship?" Yunbi stepped forward. "Ambassador, with respect, we're facing hundreds of enemy vessels. 1 ship won't make a difference." "The ship will arrive at your coordinates in 18 hours, Ambassador Park said calmly. "The pilot will explain everything when she gets there." "She?" Taman asked. "Yes, Admiral. Earth is sending Dr. So Young. She's... well, you'll understand when you meet her. Good luck." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. 1 ship? Commander Hyunwoo's hologram shook his head. 1 person? Do they think this is a joke? "Maybe it's some kind of super weapon," Boram suggested hopefully. Captain Yunbi was studying the tactical displays. "Sir, the Vorthak are accelerating. They're advanced. They must have detected our communication with Earth. We'll be in direct contact within 36 hours. Tamin stared at the stars on the screen. Somewhere out there, a single human was coming to save them all. It seemed impossible, but humans had always been surprising. "All ships, prepare for defensive positions around Kepler Station," he ordered. "We hold the line until our reinforcement arrives." As the Alliance fleet moved into formation, Taman couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. He just wasn't sure if it would be for better or worse. The last message they received before the Vorthak communication blackout was from a refugee ship that had escaped from the Altair system. The message was simple and terrifying. "They're coming. God help us all." But help was coming too. 1 ship. 1 human. 1 chance. Taman looked at the stars and hoped that would be enough. The ship that came to save the galaxy looked like a taxi. Admiral Tamin had expected something impressive. Maybe a massive battleship with weapons that could destroy planets. Maybe a sleek cruiser with technology beyond anything the Alliance had ever seen. Instead, what docked at Kepler Station was a small, boxy vessel that looked like it had been designed by someone who cared more about comfort than combat. "That's it?" General Dong-hyun asked, standing next to Tamin in the docking bay. The general was a tough old soldier who had fought in 3 wars. He looked like he wanted to punch something. "According to the manifest, yes," said Lieutenant Boram, checking her tablet. "Earth transport vessel Healing Hand. 1 passenger, no cargo except personal effects." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Tamin straightened his uniform and prepared to meet Earth's secret weapon. A woman stepped out. She was maybe 50 years old with graying black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore plain civilian clothes, a comfortable-looking shirt and pants in soft blue colors. Over her shoulder was a worn leather bag that looked like it had traveled across half the galaxy. She was shorter than most of the Alliance officers around her, and when she smiled, the lines around her eyes suggested someone who smiled often. "Hello," she said in accented but clear Alliance standard. "I'm Dr. So-Young. You must be Admiral Taemin." General Dong-hyun stepped forward, his face red with anger. "This is what Earth sends us? One middle-aged woman with a medical bag? We asked for military support." Dr. So-Young looked at the general with calm, interested eyes. "You must be very frustrated," she said gently. "You've been fighting hard, losing friends, watching worlds burn. Now someone shows up who doesn't look like she can help at all." The general opened his mouth to say something harsh, but something in her tone made him pause. "I'm sorry for your losses," Dr. So-Young continued. "I know this seems wrong, but I'm here to help, and I'd like to start by understanding the situation better. Could someone show me to your medical facilities?" "Medical facilities?" Taemin asked. "Doctor, we were expecting, military assistance." "I am military assistance," she said with that same gentle smile. "Just not the kind you were expecting. May I see your wounded?" Lieutenant Boram, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. "I can show you to the medical bay, Doctor." "Thank you. What's your name?" "Lieutenant Boram, Communications Officer." "Nice. To meet you, Boram. Have you been having trouble sleeping?" The young officer looked surprised. "How did you—" "Yes, actually. The nightmares. Very common in situations like this. We'll talk about that later if you'd like." Dr. So-Young turned back to Admiral Taemin. "Admiral, I know this is confusing. Give me 24 hours. If you don't see any results by then, I'll understand if you want to send me home." General Dong-hyun made a disgusted sound. 24 hours. The Vorthak will be here in less than 36. We need weapons, ships, soldiers. You have weapons and ships and soldiers, Dr. So-Young said quietly. What you need is something else entirely. She followed Boram toward the medical bay, leaving the senior officers standing in the docking bay. "This is insane," General Dong-hyun muttered. "We're all going to die because Earth sent us a therapist." But Taemin was thinking about something else. When Dr. So-Young had spoken to General Dong-hyun, the anger had drained out of his face. Just for a moment, the tough old soldier had looked peaceful. The medical bay on Kepler Station was crowded. Wounded soldiers from a dozen different species lay on beds, some recovering from injuries, others dealing with trauma that couldn't be seen. The air smelled of antiseptic and despair. Dr. So-Young walked slowly through the ward, stopping at each bed. She didn't just look at medical charts, she talked to people, really talked to them. "Tell me about your homeworld," she said, to a young Altarian pilot whose hands shook every time he tried to hold something. "What was your favorite thing about being a teacher?" she asked a civilian refugee who had been staring at the ceiling for days. "Your unit calls you lucky, but you don't feel very lucky right now, do you?" she said to a sergeant who had been the only survivor when his ship was destroyed. Lieutenant Boram watched from the doorway, fascinated. Every person Dr. So-Young spoke with seemed to brighten somehow. Not healed exactly, but more present, more alive. "She's not even treating their injuries," said Dr. Kwan Ho, the station's chief medical officer. He had been skeptical when this human woman showed up asking to work with his patients. "Look at their faces," Boram said quietly. Dr. Kwan Ho looked. The Altarian pilot was holding a cup of water without spilling it. The teacher was sitting up, talking to the patient in the next bed. The sergeant was actually smiling as he told Dr. So-Young about his teammates. "What is she doing?" Dr. Kwan Ho whispered. "I think she's listening," Boram said. That evening, Dr. So-Young asked to see the Vorthak prisoners. "Absolutely not," General Dong-hyun said immediately. "Those creatures are dangerous. They don't talk, they don't cooperate, and they certainly don't deserve medical treatment." "How many do you have?" Dr. So-Young asked Admiral Taemin. 12. We captured them when one of their fighters was damaged. Have you learned anything useful from them? Nothing, they won't speak. May I try? General Dong-hyun looked like he was going to explode. Try what? These aren't people having a bad day, these are the enemy, they've killed millions. Dr. So-young nodded. Yes, they have. And I'd like to understand why. The detention level of Kepler Station was heavily guarded. The Vorthak prisoners were kept in separate cells with energy barriers. They were humanoid but taller than most species, with pale gray skin and dark eyes that seemed to absorb light. They wore simple prison clothing, but they still looked dangerous. The first prisoner didn't even look up when Dr. So-young approached his cell. Hello, she said in Alliance Standard. My name is So-young. I'm a doctor. The Vorthak remained motionless. She tried again in several other languages. Still nothing. Then she sat down on the floor outside his cell and opened her bag. She pulled out a small device and began making notes, occasionally looking up at the prisoner. She didn't try to talk. She just sat there. After an hour, the Vorthak looked at her. You're not afraid, he said in heavily accented Alliance Standard. Should I be? She asked calmly. Your people always fear us. My people aren't here. I'm here. And I'm not afraid of you. The Vorthak sat up straighter. Why? Because you're in pain, Dr. So-young said simply. The prison guard, a veteran sergeant named Minjai, almost fell over. In 6 months of captivity, none of the Vorthak had spoken more than a few words. Now this one was having a conversation. You don't know anything about pain, the Vorthak said. But his voice was quieter. I know that beings who aren't hurting don't usually hurt others, Dr. So-young replied. I know that armies full of pain become very good at spreading that pain around, and I know that everyone, absolutely everyone, wants the pain to stop. The Vorthak was quiet for a long time, then he said, They call you humans the soft ones. We probably are compared to you, but you came here, alone, to help your enemies fight us. I came here to help everyone, Dr. So-young said, including you. By the end of her first day on Kepler Station, Dr. So-young had done something impossible. She had made people hope, not everyone, and not completely. But throughout the station, beings who had been going through the motions of survival were starting to remember what they were fighting for. Admiral Taemin found her in the station's small chapel, a quiet space where beings of different faiths could find peace. She was sitting alone, looking tired but not defeated. Doctor, he said, sitting down beside her, I owe you an apology. For what? For expecting you to be something you're not, she smiled. I get that a lot. People hear that Earth is sending help and they imagine weapons or technology. They don't imagine someone who just talks to people. Is that really all you do, Doctor? So-young was quiet for a moment. Admiral, what's the Vorthak's greatest strength? They adapt to everything we throw at them. Exactly. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy, they counter it. But there's one thing they can't adapt to. What's that? Being treated like they matter. Admiral Taemin looked at her, beginning to understand. Tomorrow the Vorthak fleet arrives, Dr. So-young said. Your people will fight better than they ever have before. Not because I gave them better weapons, but because I reminded them what they're fighting for. And some of those Vorthak soldiers, well, we'll see. As if summoned by her words, Lieutenant Boram appeared in the chapel doorway. Admiral, sorry to interrupt. We just received a message from one of our forward scouts. The Vorthak fleet is moving faster than expected. They'll be here in 18 hours. Taemin felt his heart sink, but then he looked at Dr. So-young. Whitey didn't look worried. 18 hours, she said thoughtfully. That should be just enough time. Enough time for what? He asked. She stood up, shouldering her worn leather bag. To finish what I started. As she walked away, Admiral Taemin realized something had changed in him too. For the first time in months, he believed they might actually win. Something was spreading through Kepler Station, and it wasn't a disease. Commander Kiwoo noticed it first in his pilots. 3 days ago, They had been flying their missions like robots, mechanical, efficient, but without heart. They did their jobs because they had to, not because they wanted to. Now they were different. "Sir, requesting permission to extend patrol range," said Lieutenant Ha Newell, one of his youngest pilots. "Why?" Kiwu asked. "There might be more refugee ships out there. I want to make sure we find them before the Vorthak do." Kaiwu studied the young woman's face. He knew had been barely functional a week ago. Her confidence had been destroyed when her squadron was wiped out at the Battle of Rigel Prime. She had been the only survivor, and the guilt had eaten her, alive. Now she looked determined, like someone who had found her purpose again. "What changed, Hanul?" She thought about it for a moment. "I talked to that human doctor. She helped me understand that surviving doesn't make me guilty. It makes me responsible. Responsible for what? For making sure my friends didn't die for nothing." Kiwu approved the extended patrol. As he watched Hanul's fighter launch, he realized he felt something he hadn't felt in months: pride in his people. Across the station, similar conversations were happening everywhere. In engineering, Chief Technician Junho had been working 18-hour days trying to keep the station's systems running. The constant stress and impossible demands had turned him bitter and angry. He snapped at his subordinates, cut corners on repairs, and had started talking about requesting a transfer to somewhere safer. Dr. So-Young found him in the reactor room at Oro 300 hours, staring at a diagnostic panel. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked, settling down on a supply crate beside him. "Sleep is a luxury," he muttered. "These systems are falling apart faster than I can fix them." "You've been here since the station was built, haven't you?" 7 years. That's a long time to call somewhere home." Junho looked at her. "This isn't home, this is just where I work." "Is it?" Dr. So-Young pulled out a thermos and poured 2 cups of tea. "Tell me about the first system you installed here." "The environmental processors. Boring stuff, but essential stuff. Without those, nobody could live here. I guess." "How many people live on Kepler Station now?" "About 12,000 with the refugees. 12,000 people can breathe because of something you built with your own hands." She handed him a cup of tea. "That sounds like making a home to me." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the steady hum of the reactor. "She's right, you know," Junho said to his assistant the next day. "This is our home. These are our people. We don't just keep the lights on, we keep everyone alive." The assistant, a young Centauri named Bei Jin, had never heard the chief talk like that before. But it made him work harder too. In the detention center, something even more remarkable was happening. Dr. So-Young had been spending several hours each day with the Vorthak prisoners. She didn't interrogate them or try to get military secrets. She just talked to them about their lives, their fears, their pain. "You have younglings," she said to one of them, a soldier named Seok Jin, who had been a mid-level commander. "Had," he corrected. "They died when I was conscripted." "How old were they?" "Young. They needed care, but the Empire said my duty was more important. That must have hurt terribly." Seok Jin was quiet for a long time. "Vorthak do not speak of hurt." "Why not?" "Because hurt makes you weak. Weak soldiers lose battles." Dr. So-Young considered this. "In my experience, soldiers who never admit their hurt eventually break completely. But soldiers who acknowledge their pain and work through it become stronger." "Your people are soft." "Maybe. But we're still here." Guard Sergeant Minjae had been listening to these conversations for days. At first, he had been disgusted that anyone would show kindness to these monsters. The Vorthak had killed his brother at the Battle of Wolf 359. But as he listened to Dr. So-Young talk with them, he began to hear something else. These weren't monsters. They were people who had been turned into monsters by a system that punished weakness and rewarded cruelty. "Doctor," he said one day after she finished her rounds, "that one, Seok-Jin, he's different from the others." "How so?" "He asks about the refugees, about whether they're being treated well. Yesterday he wanted to know if there were enough medical supplies for everyone. Dr. So Young nodded. He's remembering what it feels like to care about other people. Is that possible? After everything he's done? Sergeant, what's the worst thing you've ever done? Minjai thought about it. I once left a wounded enemy soldier to die instead of calling for help. I was angry about my brother. How do you feel about that now? Ashamed. But you're still a good person, aren't you? I try to be. So is he. Word of the changes on Kepler Station spread quickly through subspace communications. Other Alliance commanders began requesting updates, not about military situations, but about this human doctor who was somehow transforming their people. Captain Yunbi was analyzing the communication logs when she noticed something strange. Admiral, we're getting requests from 17 different Alliance positions asking when Dr. So Young might visit them. 17? And sir, we're also getting communications from Vorthak-controlled systems. Admiral Taemin looked up from his tactical displays. What kind of communications? Surrender offers. Not from command structures, but from individual ships and outposts. They're asking about the human healer and whether she would be allowed to treat Vorthak wounded. This was unprecedented. In 2 years of war, no Vorthak unit had ever surrendered. How? Many offers? 43 so far, and the number is growing. Lieutenant Boram, who had been monitoring communications, looked up from her station. Admiral, I think I know why. She put the latest intercept on the main screen. It was a Vorthak military communication, but instead of the usual cold efficiency, there was something different in the voice. This is Commander Doc Su of the 15th Assault Wing. We have wounded who need medical attention. We request permission to approach Kepler Station under flag of truce. That's impossible, said General Dong Hyun, who had just arrived on the bridge. The Vorthak don't take prisoners, and they don't surrender. They fight until they die. Maybe they're tired of dying, Admiral Taemin said quietly. The real test came when the Vorthak advance fleet arrived at the edge of the system. Instead of immediately attacking, they stopped. For 6 hours, they just sat there. 12 massive black warships against the stars. Then they sent a message. The face that appeared on the screen was unmistakably Vorthak. Tall, pale, with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. But this, one looked uncertain. Alliance forces, this is Fleet Commander Jin Ho of the Vorthak Empire. We wish to speak with the human called So Young. General Dong Hyun nearly choked. They want to talk to her? Before we begin our attack, the Vorthak commander continued, we have heard stories. Stories about treatment of prisoners, about mercy, about healing. We wish to understand if these stories are true. Dr. So Young was brought to the bridge. She looked at the Vorthak commander with the same calm, interested expression she had shown everyone else. Commander Jin Ho, she said, I'm So Young. How can I help you? The Vorthak commander was quiet for several seconds. Then he said, we have wounded, many wounded. Our medical techniques are limited. I could come aboard your ship and help them. You would do that, knowing we are your enemies? I would do that knowing you have people who are suffering. Admiral Taemin stepped forward. Dr. So Young, I can't allow you to put yourself in that kind of danger. She turned to him with a small smile. Admiral, I appreciate your concern, but this is exactly what I came here to do. Commander Jin Ho's voice came through the speakers again. Human. So Young, if you come aboard our ship, if you help our wounded, what do you want in return? Nothing, she said simply. Helping people who need help is what doctors do. The bridge was silent except for the hum of electronics. Finally, Commander Jin Ho spoke again. We have never encountered this before. Encountered what? Kindness from an enemy. Dr. So Young looked around the bridge at all the Alliance officers watching her. Then she looked back at the screen. Commander, I don't think we have to be enemies. 2 hours later, Dr. So Young boarded a shuttle and flew across space to the Vorthak flagship. Half the Alliance fleet was convinced she was flying to her death. The other half was beginning to believe in miracles. She came back 8 hours later with 3 Vorthak medical officers who wanted to learn her techniques, and a request from Commander Jin Ho to open formal negotiations for the surrender of his entire fleet. How? Admiral Taemin asked her when she returned to Kepler Station. Same as always, she said, looking tired but satisfied. I listened to them. I treated their wounds. I showed them that someone cared whether they lived or died. And that was enough? The Vorthak Emperor was not pleased. High Command had been reporting delays and tactical complications for weeks, but Emperor Vextar knew the truth. His unstoppable war machine was stopping itself. Explain to me, he said to his intelligence chief, how 12 surrender letters arrived from 12 different fleets in one day. General Makhan, a veteran of 30 conquest campaigns, looked uncomfortable. My Emperor, there are reports of a human, a single individual who appears to be influencing our forces. One human is destroying my empire, not destroying my Emperor. Converting. Emperor Vextar studied the reports on his personal screen. Entire Vorthak battalions were laying down their weapons. Fleet commanders were requesting permission to negotiate. Soldiers who had never shown mercy were asking about prisoner treatment protocols. What is this human's weapon? According to our intelligence, she talks to people. The Emperor's dark eyes narrowed. She talks to people. Yes, my Emperor, and this is somehow more effective than our plasma cannons and neural disruptors. It appears so, my Emperor. Emperor Vextar was silent for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. Fascinating. Prepare the final assault fleet. If my soldiers have gone soft, then I will finish this myself. How many ships do we have that haven't been influenced? 230, my Emperor. The newest conscripts and the most loyal veterans. Good. We will show this human and her talking what real power looks like. Meanwhile, at Kepler Station, Dr. So-Young was dealing with a very different kind of problem. We have over 3,000 Vorthak personnel who have requested asylum, Admiral Taemin told her as they walked through the station's expanded refugee quarters, and more are arriving every day. The corridors were crowded with an impossible sight. Alliance soldiers and former Vorthak warriors working side by side. They were setting up sleeping areas, distributing food, and organizing medical checkups for the newcomers. How are they adjusting? Dr. So-Young asked. Better than I expected. Commander Jin Ho has been remarkable. He's been helping coordinate the integration efforts. They paused to watch a group of Alliance engineers showing former Vorthak technicians how to repair damaged equipment. The two groups were communicating in a mixture of languages and gestures, but they seemed to understand each other. Dr. So-Young, Admiral Taemin said quietly, I need to ask you something. Of course. How did you know this would work? She was quiet for a moment, watching a Vorthak medic carefully bandaging a wounded Alliance pilot's arm. I didn't know. It would work, she said finally. But I knew it was the only thing that could work. I don't understand. Admiral, how do you defeat an enemy that adapts to everything you do? You don't. That was our problem. Wrong. You become something they can't adapt to. You become something they don't want to fight against. Before Admiral Taemin could respond, Lieutenant Boram's voice came over the communication system. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. Priority 1. They found the bridge in organized chaos. Officers were running between stations, and the main screen showed a tactical display that made Admiral Taemin's blood freeze. Report, he ordered. Captain Yunbi looked up from her station. Sir, long-range sensors are showing the largest Vorthak fleet we've ever detected. 230 ships, including their Emperor-class dreadnought. The Emperor himself? Intelligence confirms it, sir. Emperor Vextar is leading the fleet personally. General Dong Hyun, who had become much more cooperative over the past weeks, studied the display grimly. They'll be here in 14 hours. Even with our converted Vorthak allies, we can't fight that many ships. Dr. So-Young moved to the tactical display and studied the formation. He's bringing them all at once. Is that significant? Admiral Taemin asked. Very. It means he's trying to end this before more of his people can change sides. He knows what's happening to his empire. Commander Jin Ho, the former Vorthak officer, had been studying the enemy fleet composition. Dr. So Young is correct. The Emperor has brought only his newest recruits and oldest loyalists. These are soldiers who either haven't heard about what's happening here, or who are too committed to the old ways to consider alternatives. Can we reach them? Dr. So Young asked. The loyalists? Unlikely. They have been conditioned since birth to follow the Emperor without question. The newer recruits, perhaps, but we would need time. We have 14 hours. That's not nearly enough to overcome years of conditioning. Dr. So Young was quiet for a moment thinking. Then she turned to Admiral Tae Min. I need to broadcast a message, system-wide on all frequencies. What kind of message? The kind that gives people a choice. 2 hours later, every communication device in the system received the same transmission. It wasn't from Admiral Tae Min or any Alliance commander. It was from Dr. So Young, sitting alone in a small recording studio aboard Kepler Station. My name is Dr. So Young, she began, speaking in clear, simple words. I am a human, and I am a doctor. I came to this system because people were hurting and dying, and I believe that no one should have to hurt or die if it can be prevented. To the soldiers of the Vorthak fleet, I know many of you have been told that this is a war that must be fought, that the Alliance are your enemies and that conquest is your destiny. I want you to know that there is another choice. Here on Kepler Station, Alliance soldiers and Vorthak soldiers work together. They eat together. They help each other heal from their wounds. They have learned that they are not so different after all. They have learned that strength doesn't come from conquering others. Real strength comes from protecting others, from helping others, from choosing compassion over cruelty. I cannot force you to make this choice. No one can force you. But I want you to know that the choice exists. If you are tired of fighting, you can stop. If you are tired of killing, you can choose to heal instead. If you are tired of destroying, you can choose to build something better. Your Emperor will tell you that this makes you weak, but I have seen Vorthak soldiers choose mercy, and they are the strongest people I have ever met. Because it takes real courage to choose love over fear. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. The message was only 3 minutes long, but it changed everything. Within 6 hours, the Vorthak fleet formation began to break apart. Ships dropped out of formation and requested permission to approach Kepler Station. Others continued toward the combat zone, but began broadcasting their own messages, not to the Alliance but to their fellow Vorthak. This is Commander Yeonjin of the 4th Assault Wing, came one transmission. I have served the Empire for 20 years. I have conquered 7 worlds and killed thousands of enemies, but I have never once helped anyone heal. I am tired of being proud of destruction. Any ship that wants to join me in trying something different, follow me to Kepler Station. 12 ships followed him. This is Captain Subin of the 10th Destroyer Squadron, came another. My brother died fighting the Alliance 2 years ago. I thought I came here to avenge him, but I realized something. He wouldn't want me to die for revenge. He would want me to live for something better. 8 more ships changed course. By the time Emperor Vextar's personal dreadnought reached the outer system, his fleet of 230 ships had been reduced to 43. The rest had either joined the growing peace movement at Kepler Station or simply disappeared into deep space, their crews choosing exile over continued warfare. The Emperor's final message was broadcast to the entire system. I am Emperor Vextar, ruler of the Vorthak Empire. For 800 years my people have conquered and destroyed. We have been strong. We have been feared. We have been successful. But I see now that strength built on fear cannot last. An empire built on cruelty will always destroy itself. Eventually. To the human called So Young, you have done something I thought was impossible. You have shown my people that they are more than weapons, that they can choose to be more than I made them. I will not surrender because that is not who I am. But I will not continue this war either. The 43 ships still loyal to me will leave this system and never return. The Vorthak Empire ends today. Do something better with the peace you have won. His ships jumped to hyperspace without firing a shot. Admiral Taemin found Dr. So Young in the observation deck, watching the stars where the Emperor's fleet had disappeared. "It's over," he said quietly. "This part is over," she corrected. "Now the real work begins." "What do you mean?" She gestured toward the viewport, where dozens of ships from both fleets floated peacefully together. Alliance vessels and former Vorthak warships, their weapons powered down, their crews working together. Now we have to figure out how to build something that lasts. How to make sure this never happens again, how to turn enemies into allies and allies into family. Is that possible? Dr. So Young smiled, and for the first time since arriving at Kepler Station she looked truly hopeful. "Admiral, 6 weeks ago you thought it was impossible for one person to stop a war. Look what happened when we gave people a chance to choose. Something better than fighting." She paused, watching a group of mixed Alliance and Vorthak engineers working together to repair a damaged refugee ship. 3 years later, when Ambassador Jin A walked through the halls of the Galactic Peace Institute, she still marveled at how much the universe had changed. The building had once been a Vorthak military academy, designed to train officers in the art of conquest. Now it was filled with students from dozens of species learning something entirely different. The classrooms that had once echoed with war chants now hosted quiet discussions about conflict resolution and trauma healing. "Dr. So Young will see you now," said Cadet Minho, a young human who served as one of the Institute's guides. He had been born on a colony world that the Vorthak had attacked, but there was no anger in his voice when he mentioned his former enemies. Jin found Dr. So Young in her office, reviewing applications from across the galaxy. The walls were covered with photographs and letters from people whose lives had been changed by the Institute's work. "Ambassador," Dr. So Young said, looking up with that same warm smile that had somehow ended a war. "Thank you for coming. How was your journey from Proxima?" "Peaceful," Jin replied, settling into a comfortable chair. "I still can't get used to traveling through space without worrying about pirate attacks or border conflicts. The galaxy is getting safer every year. Thanks to this place, the Peace Corps has been deployed to 17 conflicts in the last 2 years, and they've successfully resolved 14 of them." Dr. So Young nodded, but she looked thoughtful rather than proud. "We've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. Each situation is different. Tell me about the latest class." "Remarkable group. We have former soldiers from 6 different species, including several ex-Vorthak officers. We have diplomats, doctors, teachers, even some engineers who want to learn how to build bridges instead of weapons." Through the office window, Jeannie could see students practicing in the courtyard. A mixed group of beings sat in a circle, learning what Dr. So Young called deep listening, the art of truly hearing what someone was trying to communicate beyond just their words. "What's the most important thing you teach them?" Jin asked. "That everyone has a story, and that if you take the time to really understand someone's story, their pain, their fears, their hopes, it becomes very hard to see them as an enemy." A soft chime indicated that someone was at the door. Dr. So Young called for them to enter, and Admiral Taemin stepped in. He looked different from the desperate commander who had first contacted Earth 3 years ago. The stress lines around his eyes had softened, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had found peace with himself. "Admiral," Dr. So Young said warmly, "how did the Senate hearing go?" "Very well. They've approved funding for 12 new Peace Corps units. We'll be able to respond to conflicts throughout the Outer Rim." "Any opposition?" "Some. General Kang Wu still believes that military force is the only language some species understand. But he's in the minority now." Admiral Taemin had become the Director of Galactic Defense Coordination, but his job description had changed dramatically. Instead of planning wars, he now coordinated humanitarian missions and peacekeeping operations. "Speaking of General Kang Wu," Jin said, "I heard an interesting report about the Rigel situation." The Rigel crisis had been their most challenging case yet. 2 allied species had gone to war over mining rights, and their conflict was threatening to destabilize an entire sector. Traditional diplomatic approaches had failed, and military intervention would have made things worse. We sent a Peace Corps team led by Commander Ki Wu, Admiral Tae-min explained. Instead of trying to negotiate a treaty, they focused on helping both sides deal with the underlying trauma that was driving the conflict. Trauma? Jin-A asked. Dr. So-young pulled up a holographic display showing the Rigel system. Both species had suffered massive losses in previous wars. They were fighting over the mining rights because they were terrified of being vulnerable again. Fear was driving them to make choices that actually made them less secure. So what did the Peace Corps do? They helped both sides tell their stories, Admiral Tae-min said. Really tell them, to beings who were willing to listen without judgment. Once each group understood what the other had been through, they stopped seeing each other as threats. And now? Now they're working together to develop the minds jointly. Both species get what they need, and they're stronger allies than they were before the conflict started. Jin-A shook her head in amazement. 3 years ago, that would have been impossible. 3 years ago, we thought the only way to solve conflicts was to win them, Dr. So-young said. Now we're learning that sometimes the best solution is to help everyone heal from them. A student knocked on the door and entered nervously. It was Cadet Yoon Seo, a young Vorthak woman who had joined the institute 6 months earlier. Dr. So-young, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation in the communication center. What kind of situation? We've received a distress call from the Andromeda Mining Collective. They're requesting immediate Peace Corps assistance. Dr. So-young and Admiral Tae-min exchanged glances. The Andromeda Collective was in a different galaxy entirely. If their reputation was spreading that far, it meant something remarkable was happening. What's the nature of their conflict? Admiral Tae-min asked. It's not exactly a conflict, sir, Yoon Seo said hesitantly. They say they're being invaded by something called the Devourers, a machine intelligence that consumes entire worlds. But they're not asking for weapons or military support. What are they asking for? They want to know if we can teach the Devourers to stop. The room was quiet for a moment. They want us to negotiate with machines that eat planets, Jin-A said slowly. Apparently some of their scout units have been captured, and the collective discovered that the Devourers are driven by a kind of hunger, not for resources but for purpose. They were created as terraforming machines, but their creators disappeared millions of years ago. They've been consuming worlds because it's the only thing they know how to do. Dr. So-young was already reaching for her communication device. Get me Commander Jinho's team, and prepare a long-range transport. Doctor, Admiral Tae-min said carefully, are you seriously considering trying to provide therapy to machine intelligences? Admiral, 3 years ago you would have said it was impossible to provide therapy to Vorthak warriors. But here we are, training former conquerors to become peacekeepers. She gestured toward the window, where Cadet Yoon Seo was now joining the circle of students practicing deep listening techniques. Every being in this universe wants the same basic things: to have purpose, to be understood, to not be alone. If these Devourers are truly intelligent, then they want those things too. They just don't know how to ask for them. 2 weeks later, Jin-A found herself aboard a Peace Corps transport ship heading for the Andromeda Galaxy. The crew was the most diverse group she had ever seen. Humans, former Vorthak, Alliance species she didn't even recognize, and several beings who had apparently been enemies just a few years earlier. Dr. So-young was reviewing psychological profiles and cultural studies, preparing for a kind of first contact that no one had ever attempted before. Are you nervous? Jin-A asked her. Always, Dr. So-young admitted. But that's good. Being nervous means you care about the outcome. What if it doesn't work? What if some conflicts really can't be resolved through understanding and compassion? Dr. So-young looked out at the stars streaming past their viewport. Then we learn from that failure and find a better approach for next time. But Jin-A, in 3 years of doing this work, we haven't found a single conflict that couldn't be improved by helping people understand each other better. Even the Devourers? Especially the Devourers. Think about it. They've been alone for millions of years carrying out the last orders their creators gave them. They must be so lonely. The ship's communication officer, a former Vorthak named Sang-min, looked up from his station. Dr. So-young, we're receiving a transmission from the collective. They say one of the Devourer units has agreed to meet with us. Agreed? Apparently. When they explained that we wanted to help them find a new purpose instead of destroying them, the unit stopped its consumption process and requested a conversation. Dr. So Young smiled, that warm, hopeful smile that had changed the galaxy. Then let's go have a conversation. As their ship approached the edge of Andromeda, Jin A reflected on how much the universe had changed. 3 years ago, the response to the Devourer threat would have been massive fleets and superweapons. Now they were sending doctors and counselors and former enemies who had learned to work together, and somehow that felt like a much more powerful response. Behind them, throughout both galaxies, the effects of their work continued to spread. Former war zones had become centers of learning and cooperation. Species that had fought for generations were now collaborating on projects that benefited everyone. Children were growing up in a universe where conflict didn't automatically mean violence. Dr. So Young had been right, all those years ago on Kepler Station. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or force. It was their ability to see the potential for good in everyone and to help others see it too.